welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And we have transformed for you straight from the cinema with our spoiler-free review of...
The Wolfman! I don't know how that was.
I had to let you go.
You had to let me. I don't know why it's there, but sometimes it is, and you just got to get it out.
You've got to get those demons out.
You've got to exercise yourself every now and then.
So Leigh Whannell's Wolfman, the latest in the Universal Pictures trying to revive the monster movie, I guess.
Kind of, yes. So obviously last week we did Nosferatu. Which we had some differing opinions on.
We did.
Obviously, go and check it out. It is spoiler filled, I'm afraid, because I think it had been out for quite some time.
Yes.
However, this I believe is the day of release. Last week I said it looks like the boys are back in town. You know, Wolfman, Nosferatu, and then a couple of years ago the Invisible Man. After watching this, I don't know if the boys are back in town. You know, I'll be completely honest, man. The more I thought it started off pretty good. And then the more it went on, the more I noticed just some issues I had with it that just got in the way of my kind of enjoyment and undercut a lot of the things that I felt didn't work. So that worked in The Invisible Man, strangely enough, but kind of with this, I felt didn't work quite so well. I mean, it's spoiler free, so we're trying to keep it above the belt.
Well, I haven't seen Invisible Man, so I can't compare it with his previous work in this area of almost grounding these classic monsters in almost more like a modern / almost quasi-believable, I guess, kind of like trying to... It's still supernatural, but it's like lowest form of supernatural or sci-fi or technology or whatever, like with Invisible Man and things like that. Like, how can you... And he's had another go at doing this. I think I liked it more than you did. So I think we're split on that one. I think I liked it more. I think I found more to like in this, and I don't know if it's because I'd heard a lot of negativity beforehand. Maybe. This is a very mixed. This seems to have gone right down the middle with people. You either like that it's got that kind of, grounded, low key, minimalist, I guess, in some ways, not in other ways, or you're kind of disappointed that it's not like a full on werewolf movie kind of thing. I guess in some ways, like, seems to be the thing. I mean, I did one thing that kind of got to me while I was watching the film though was that I did think that there was a constant tension and suspense that ran throughout the film. I felt that suspense was there, and I felt that there was a constant kind of, from the way they use the camera, the way that they don't show the monster very much at all throughout a lot of the film. I felt that there were different tricks used that worked well, when I'd seen a lot of reviews that said this this wasn't scary. Oh. It had no fear to it, and it had no, and I just think that that's not true.
I mean, respectfully, I feel like I disagree. I feel like there were definitely moments where it was they did use some really, or Leigh Whannell did use some really interesting techniques, so there was a lot of stuff where you see something maybe moving in the background. The opening, I think I'll talk a little bit, but there's an opening where somebody is like looking through a rifle scope, and you get a very brief flash of something, and I thought that was great. And then there's kind of moments where it's very still, and you just see kind of like breath coming up from over something. I felt those bits were great, and you get a lot of that more at the start. However, as the film went on, what I kind of noticed was, and this worked in Invisible Man because it's the Invisible Man. It's kind of supposed to be very still. You could have a shot of a chair and not being any noise, and just being like, is there something there? Did I hear it? Like the leather creak? Whereas I feel like there were points in this where it got to, there were just moments where it was somebody walking through like a living room, and I was like, for me, the over-reliance on the ambient noise started to get a bit like, I feel like if they had the points where there was a little bit of a backing track, even as subtle as it was, that's where I felt actually had some tension. When it was relying on ambient noise and silence, I kind of didn't really feel much, and it was just dark, and it was just, I didn't really feel like there was much tension there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't think that I'm not saying it was consistently throughout, but for a film that's about an hour and 40 odd minutes long, I know while watching it, I knew what a lot of people would think of this film, and I knew a lot of people will say that it's slow and it's things like that.
Yeah.
For me, for what they were trying to do with the thing, I felt it kind of gets into it pretty quickly in this film. I thought it could have been dragged out way longer than it is. It kind of gets pretty straight into the point of attack with the family kind of thing, to not delve into exactly what happens in those scenes. But again, if you've seen the trailer, you kind of already know that opening part, because it pretty much was all given away. That first part was definitely all given away in the trailer. To us, if you'd heard too much about this film, it probably would have added some more less effect as it goes, because they did feels as though they gave quite a lot of this film away, and in the last week or so, I think they've been giving away basically shots of everything. So
it seems like they don't have too much faith in it.
They're trying to push it. I don't think the Wolf Mask Man that they did for the Halloween Horror Nights in America in October did them any help by showing a mask that does not represent actually what the creature looks like. Now that's going to be a divisive part indeed of the look of the monster.
Oh, that'll 100%. Cause a lot of problems.
There's two different designs, really, because one doesn't look exactly like the other, even though, we've got the different parts in there.
I also feel like there were just some, narratively, I feel like there were some interesting choices. And then by the time I got to the end, I was just thinking, maybe the other person should have been the one who got infected, and the person who got infected, who kind of had a lot of the story and the narrative, should have been doing maybe more of the legwork, as opposed to what we got, which ended up being, for me at least, being very muddled. There were some moments that I did that were visually quite interesting, seeing I'm trying not to go into spoilers too heavy.
I mean, this is the hard thing that's going through my head, is the problem is, and I could almost imagine that Leigh Whannell wanted this to possibly be, and sadly that is the case, and we've talked many times about trailers kind of fucking these things up, is the fact that I oddly think that this, when you saw the first one they released, or the first promos they released, did not attain to the idea of the wolf or who or what was it. The following trailer basically gave away exactly what almost would have been a twist if they didn't reveal it in the trailers. Because what happens across, the change across the film and who it happens to, which you'll know if you've seen the trailer, is pretty much laid out, whereas I think it would come as a bit more if it wasn't so obvious in all of the trailers that people have seen in the cinemas on adverts and stuff like that this is what's going to happen to this character. It would have been more interesting if there was more ambiguity around that. But I can see what you mean around it, that it's interesting that I am almost surprised that he didn't do the old swap of who it would be, because it seems like it could have worked either way to swap it up a little bit.
Feels like it would have worked much better, given the kind of built-in narrative that we have and what we're building towards.
I mean, it wouldn't with the theme though, because there is a strong theme of fathers not wanting to become fathers, sons not wanting to become fathers. I mean, as well. That's pretty much the linchpin of the emotional core of this kind of film. Is about those familial relationships and how people are bonded to each other, and that bond that can be broken. I think that's the part that I thought that theme running through it, I quite liked that. I didn't like it throughout. There is a part when that comes to an head when I was I knew that this was going to happen, but I kind of don't want this to happen. It's more of an action scene, I guess, more of a fight scene, and I was a bit I know this has to happen. Luckily it does not long it out, and it doesn't last too long, but it was one that was quite obviously, and I don't know if that's just because I'd already heard something that akens to a twist that is in this film, which is somewhat of a twist, but it's a little bit heavy-handed on giving it away even in the opening, I think.
Oh, hell, yeah. Yeah.
What the twist will be.
But yeah, I picked up on the theme that they were going for. I just felt like it was kind of mishandled.
Yeah. It was a bit like heavy-handed. I think there was meant to be obviously there's meant to be quite an emotional kind of, I think, core to this, of the idea of what if someone you loved was changing kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's the part that works well, and the part that maybe should have been delved into a bit more. Should have actually been pushed more to give more of an emotional impact over the horror impact, the body horror that they've got. Yeah,
because they definitely do. I mean, we said in a lot of the reviews we're talking about the body horror aspects, and I mean werewolves were kind of body horror before body horror was a thing, really. But the random and sporadic parts of the body horror, I think, is when this film is at its best. Yeah, I thought that was quite cool. When it has that, and it's not just because it's the body horror, but it's the way that I actually quite liked the way they played it in this, and it's very and I believe this was something that inspired Leigh Whannell in a way, is it's the Fly. Yeah, there's a very the Fly theme that runs through this film, and the way the transformations kind of happen, the body, like, it doesn't go full on like the Fly, it doesn't go to that extent kind of thing. But I think you can almost see it in some of the scenes, the way that when you say the way that there's a disgusting, there is a disgustingness to some of the stuff that characters do to themselves, like in little parts of scenes kind of thing, that I think played that. I think even in our show, it got a reaction from some people. I think personally that this, for people that are not like fully into werewolves, fully into like horror, I think this is a movie that if you took like a partner to see it, who's not very into horror, kind of thing, I think that they would actually get more the drama side of it, and then the horror would come in as and they'd be quite like grossed out by this. It's almost like it's almost like showing them The Fly, but the light version. Yeah. This is like the lighter version of like, and then you show them the actual Fly, they're just like, what the fuck did you show me? Yeah, why did you show me this? Whereas this version is like, you can show them the elements that may have ideas of the Fly, but they'll kind of, I think, be able to take it a little bit more because it plays out more in a family dynamic way instead of the Fly, which is just balls to the wall. Which is just Jeff Goldblum pounding as much as he can. Just pounding and eating and breaking arms. Yeah. I mean, what did you think about this? Is, we briefly touched on it, but it's going to be a point of contention. I don't know why I said that so weird. But what did you think about the creature design, or the titular Wolfman? I think that we have a transformation that happens pretty much going across the majority of the second to third act. Yeah. And that transformation changes and things like that. There are some points when the makeup on the character look quite odd at times. I liked it when it's earlier. As I said, early on it's quite Fly. So it's quite like oily skin and, kind of very way. Looks like real sick, real thing, which I really liked at that point. There's a point when it goes to like a second stage when we get a little bit more of some of the characteristics, when it just looks a little bit more like, that's a very special dog. Yeah. Just a hairy man. And then it gets to the final one, and I personally don't have too much of a problem with it. If I'm honest, if you put more hair on that, it looks like a Wolfman. Yeah. I think it's quite a hairless version, but the facial features, once it was fully into thing, especially in the final, what I'd say is the final shot we kind of get towards the end. Knowing that this is not meant to be the Wolfman who's going to chase people through the streets and stuff like that. This is meant to be the one who's gone through a traumatic kind of, this is more of the body of someone is changing, and how do you deal with that in a more human aspect and less in a, oh my god, run through the streets kind of way. So it's got to take it back to that familiar thing of that just being the body horror of someone who is changed in their almost natural skin, and it's more just that, yes, there is some more hair, but it's not a lot. Their hair is kind of gone, their body's there. But I thought facially wise, I was like, if you added additional hair around that, you can see where that is
that is the wolf. That is the wolf.
They did have some kind of tributes to the Wolfman with it's supposed to be that kind of slicked back, sweaty kind of hair, receding hairline.
I felt it very, it felt very, in some scenes it felt very much like the original Wolfman design, where it does look kind of human with a kind of characteristics, and again, you can't do it exactly like that way anyway, because it would look, look ridiculous, because, we'd
put fur on a man.
Basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It would just be Teen Wolf.
So I can almost see why the design looks the way it is, because it is one of those boundaries between where does it go, before it starts to look too much like, I don't know, some kind of underworld or something, that kind of way. Like, it's a really hard balance. I would say werewolves are really easy to get shit. To do shit. I don't like any of the ones in. I don't like any of the ones in the Underworld film, stuff like that. I do find most of the time that, American Werewolf is great, but again, it's very minimal, and that's more of a wolf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's more of like a big butch wolf kind of design. Yeah. But doing the actual man wolf, that actual design, I think is actually like, how many times has it ever been really like truly great?
It's tricky to do well,
It is, and this is also not this is only a $25 million budget film.
Yeah.
This is a film that's made in order to make a profit, with the expectation that if they made this for £100 million, they know that they'd be losing money.
Oh, definitely.
It's not going to make it.
Going to make much money, unfortunately.
But that's why they make it for 25, because if it just clears a certain amount of money, like if it does one good opening weekend, it's good. Good. We don't need to worry about it. Like that. This is smart movie, so the design probably could have been smart movie making.
I thought you said this is smart moo.
Smart movie. I think I cut off there.
It's smart moo.
It is, but I think it's also going to be within the. I don't know how much they could do with the budget that they've got. I'm not saying that that's a low budget, but this is the same budget as like Scream 2020, the Scream reboot version, the set 2022 one. Like, that's the same budget for those two films. One's like a slasher that only involves one needs to have actual special effects. So it's a really hard part to do.
And you toe the line between keeping it grounded, which is obviously the idea, and it opens up with this kind of like opening crawl about like this mountain disease that people get, and then what the indigenous people called it, and it's like Face of the Wolf or something like that, So
it is trying to take it more down to almost the like ritualistic, like heritage based,
or just a more grounded version, as opposed to like Van Helsing, muscle-bound kind of CGI werewolf.
It was never going to be the full-on like giant wolf. You know what I mean? It was never going to be like they're chased. Oh my god! Now we're getting chased by a full-on CGI wolf or something like that. It was never going to be that. It's a hard one because of the look, and also and to be honest, sometimes it can even be changed by the actor who's behind the. And it is one of those things. You've got Christopher Abbott here, and there's just something about his face that like at times like that works better in certain parts, and then certain later it doesn't.
I wish they did lean into a bit more full with it. I'm not saying it needed to be fully CGI, but there were moments where it did just look like it was just a shirtless man crawling after you.
I mean, that's I think that's just because like Wolfman. I think that was
more
they're just trying to take it into. They were just trying to take it that they are changing, but going animalistic, aren't they? It's an animalistic approach to that. Somewhat reminded me, kind of at times, of like in like The Descent or something like that, like the crawlers, the crawlers in the thing. Like that was kind of the feeling I was getting at certain points. So more like that kind of feeling than necessarily like the full on like wolf kind of character, more the animalistic traits kind of thing. But that's why it's gonna be divisive. Like the design, it's not a perfect design. It's really hard. We're not going into like the specific of what happens, but we can't really avoid basically what is kind of the public knowledge of those things. It's just why it's really hard not to be like, this is who is the wolf, because I think you've probably got the idea anyway. It's pretty much given away. So I kind of
one man in the film, really.
But and like all those things, that there's an original kind of some creature, wolf, whatever, that is originally chasing them. Not revealing who that is in this version. Although I would say that I think that the the transformation version looks better than the other one we get, which just doesn't quite. Just doesn't quite look right. It looks weird that the other version, which apparently has been changed for way longer, looks less wolf-like than the final version.
It looks a bit Tyler Mane and Sabretooth.
Yeah, it does look a bit like that, but his facial, he doesn't even look like he's got the same, like, almost extended face. It doesn't look as wolf-like as thing, which is odd. You'd think he's the one, like... That's the one where I feel like...
Keep them guessing.
No spoilers. Sorry, apologies.
The wolf they.
Pronouns, them, they.
Yeah, keep them guessing.
But that's one of those things where you look at it and go, the version we get at the end of the film, if we say that version is thing, and as I've mentioned already, there's a slightly less hairy version, like less hairless. I feel the other one should have been more to show that actually the later they go, the more that's going to grow, and the more that one should have been a little bit more, so that this end version we know is actually he just never it's at that version. It's at that point where it's like right now he's only transformed to this point.
Yeah,
there's more that will come, and I think that's what throws it off at one point to not talk about any more about that part before I give just away whoever it is. I'm just trying to fit one other aspect that I quite liked is the way that they use within it wasn't just a body horror, but it's the way that it actually affects the language of the father. I liked the kind of the back and forth. There's a kind of the characters start to not be able to understand each other, like there's a completely different language going on here. Yeah,
I did like it until I dug in and thought about it a little bit further. I was kind of like, it makes sense in a way. Like I liked the idea, and there's a point like after transformation where you see something from the Wolfman's point of view. You see the world, and it's kind of like you see everything so much more intense. And I really liked the kind of the progression, and I did like that at first. And then I was like, okay, so I mean, seeing the world is going to be completely changed from his point of view, but it wasn't really. And I was kind of like, it just made me think that there's definitely things. I'll have to wait for the spoiler version, but that's when for me I was like, it kind of doesn't really make much sense now.
Okay, well we'll pick that up again in the spoiler version.
Yeah. Anything else to say before we end?
Really, I think as I said, as just a viewing experience, it's not a perfect film, but I felt that it had a good tension throughout. It kept me interested throughout on a day when I was feeling quite tired anyway. So I was drawn in enough to think actually this, like, wasn't as bothered by a lot of the the kind of breaks from some of the lore and things like that are in the film. And I generally found that actually I thought some of the emotional beats worked, some of the theme worked, and for me I thought that it was mainly quite tense throughout the film. So I think there were some quite scary-ish scenes, and I'm not like someone who gets scared by these, but I could see how other people could get quite freaked out by these scenes, and including the body horror scenes.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I feel like I don't want to completely shit on the film because I don't think it was awful, and I feel like for everything that I liked, and there was stuff that I did like, the opening, I liked the characters. I thought they were relatively decent. I don't think there was any kind of standout performance, but I feel like they were decent enough characters, and the general vibe was there. But then, as the film kind of progressed, for everything that I enjoyed, there was just a misstep or something, or a couple of things that I didn't enjoy.
We'll talk about them more in the spoiler.
Yeah, we'll talk about them more in the spoiler. And obviously, go see the film. Make your own mind up, and then Kevin, let us know what you thought of the Wolfman. Yeah. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button, otherwise we will find you. We will transform you into horrendous wolf humans.
And just to say that actually, I do think that this is something that would work better on the big screen. So if you're umming and ahhing about to see it, I do think this is something that will work better on the big screen than it will on a TV.
Probably.
I think the effects and the sound and things like that probably will work better here than they do on the other side. Come back and find our spoiler review.